kind of want to talk about the black community and, religion or, yeah, I guess just religion in general, because I'm going to touch about time. So first I want to talk about like Christian, like there's a lot of blacks that go to church, but they're not actually Christians. Not in thought, not in action, because you don't have to be perfect, but you gotta try and, or a better way to say, is that they go to church, but they don't love God. They love themselves, and the thing about that is like, for one, they like to make up their own gods. So they allow God to have certain, to allow them to do things that, even though the Bible says that He's against it, He says, "Oh well, me and God have an understanding." That's one of the most key things that you hear from a lot of what you would call Christian blacks. Oh, me and God have an understanding on this. Like, no, that's not how it works. Like, that is just you making an excuse to be able to do what you want. You haven't even actually looked to see. And a lot of you don't even know the Bible well enough to even know if that's, to know why that's wrong, or if you were right in the first place. But that kind of goes back to your preachers as well, too. And I'm not saying that like all, because there are some good black churches, but there's a lot of bad ones as well. But you can see the law of God is not in the black community, and it's Torah. One of the things that convinced me that God is real is, and that it's the God of the Bible, is the Torah and those His commandments and His rule, the way He talks about civilization, what makes it good. What if a civilization does this, how they will succeed. If they do this other thing, how they will be cursed and how they won't succeed. And we see these things play out. Like, it's very accurate. And I'm not saying like it's kind of accurate. I'm saying it's very accurate in subsets. Like, or you could see in like, not just the black community, but in the white community, in places where the Torah is not taught, that church is weak and they accept things that are not good. And they kind of just go along with whatever. But in the black community, you can see this by the way that the neighborhoods are, like hoods. You know what I'm saying? Like, and how they're poor act and they're wealthy. Just the attitude. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I digress. So we'll start with this. The way you dress when you go to church. Like, you wear the not all, but you see a lot of women who wear like the shirts where their breasts are hanging out. You know what I'm saying? They wear the really thin, tight dresses would make their booty look good and all that stuff. And then some of them wear the skirts that are too short. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like if they bend over, you can start to see the bottom. Like, that stuff is not stuff that you should wear to church. And I know people are like, well, Jesus went and met the sinner. Like, but when you read in the Bible, you have to realize that when Jesus went to go meet with the sinners and to come as you are, like, He met them where they were. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't at like, no one came like that to the synagogue. No one came like that to the temple. That was sacred space. Like, there are certain places where, if you actually believe the church is, that God visits at your church, and that's a house of God, right? That's a place where you go and you meet with other Christians and God comes and dwells with you, then you should dress accordingly. Dress dress respectfully to God. And the Torah talks about how God didn't want steps leading up to His altar, because He didn't want you, if you're going up the steps, to reveal your nakedness. Like, because this is a holy space. One of the main things is, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. Like, in hood culture, which is what I talk about, is not black culture, but it's not black culture per se, but it's now become a major part of black culture, like a parasite or a leech, or spread through it like a virus. In hood culture, like, if you listen to the music and like trap music and all that stuff, and a lot, like the majority, even R&B, the majority, like a good portion of that is talking about sleeping with someone else's girl or wife or whatever, and that's like popular now. And that's not something. It's something that's very common. is creeping. Like I can tell you stories of when I work security, and I see different residents who I know have uh, you know a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and then those two residents will meet someplace and do the dirty until they get caught, right? Me, sometimes they get caught by other guards, like, but I see and I know who they are, I know who they're with, all that stuff, but it's not just that, like, it's just that's part of the culture. Getting married is not important in in black culture right now, to black in black society, which is unfortunate because that's one of the things that is needed for wealth, and then also generational wealth. I mean, not just money though, but also raising kids in a stable home, in a good home. Which, if you want to have multiple women, like, there's other alternatives as well. Like, but that's a completely different um, video. But I mean, just as a basic thing, is like, why sneak around? Why wouldn't you just meet someone who allowed that? Even that's falls short, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't make any sense. There's plenty of people who would not care, but and not to mention, like, if you get with someone, you have kids, and then you cheat, and then they break up, like, and now you're paying child support. That's not the system holding you down. That's you holding you down. Those are decisions you made. Like, and this is the thing about the Torah, is it focuses around decisions people make as a community and people make individually. And you have to bear responsibility for your own actions as an individual, and then as a collective, you bear responsibility, because if it becomes a point where that's the norm and it's accepted, then you have to bear responsibility for that. So, and we see, like, there's certain habits that have spread through the black community that will create generational poverty and not generational wealth. And so we have to think about these things. And also, how it's funny how, like, what I like to call the hood system, but like an aspect of that is the people who run the hood are the gangs, the criminals, the drug dealers, it's just criminals, right? But then the community around that allows them to do whatever they want, and they often support those criminals as well. But they're also, like, victims of robbery and murder, and most of the time they're like, no snitching until it's their cousin that gets murdered, right? Then they change their mind, but it should be like, you should snitch, like. And it's not like, I have a different idea of what snitching is. I think if you commit a crime with someone and then you tell on them to get a lesser sentence, like, to me that's a snitch. But, like, if you see someone get murdered in your neighborhood and you go and tell the police, to me that's not a snitch. That's a good citizen. Like, that's what you should be doing, because if you don't want murders to continue in your neighborhood, it has to be frowned upon. Like, you have to enforce that. Theft, robbery is a big thing too. Like, these people, like, they'll run into other people's houses and they'll break some of these murders here in Indiana, especially Fort Wayne. Like, some of these murders are robberies. Like, they were robbing someone and the people were home, and then they murdered the people, right? So, and then also, like, they'll rob other drug dealers. Like, if you're a robber, they'll set them up, and then they rob that person. A lot of those murders are from that, or from someone retaliating from getting robbed. Like, and some of the murders are just over, like, dumb stuff. So, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder. They should be basic. Like, people say, oh, well, that's just basic, but apparently it's not, right? So the black community and religion is, or at least Christianity, is they don't actually know the God of Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Or the God of the Bible is a better way of putting it, but they don't actually know the God of the Bible. I also find that a lot of, like, religious blacks lean towards racism in their religion. So, like, if they become a black Israelite, right? But they're just, a lot of them are just racist. For them, it's about color. God doesn't care about color. Like, being a white person is not a curse. Being what I'm saying, being something other than black is not a curse. That's not right. And it's just the opposite of what the white people used to do. Now black people do, and it's stupid. Like all around. Like if anyone should see that as something you shouldn't do, it should be black people, because we've been on the other side of that for the longest time. And at some point we have to say, like, it's dumb. Why are we even doing this? Like, why are we doing the same shit that they did? Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss, but it's just that stupid. It doesn't make sense. And then even so, like, it's not just like the black Israelites, but even when they go to Islam, they do the same stuff. They just use it about white people and the Jews and all that. Like, it's just the same stuff. It's garbage, right? And I don't understand why you go to Islam in the first place, because it was Islam that, pretty much ran the African slave trade. I mean, they're the ones that sold them to the whites, to Europe. Like, because you have the inter-African slave trade, you have the Islamic slave trade, which I think was like 1,400 years. It still goes to this day. They kidnap people and they sell them in the markets. But the problem in the black community is that they do not respect Torah. And that when they do, or they kind of do, it's based on racism. That, like, they mix their religion with racism. Not all. Not like the normal, but I'm talking about like the black Israelites, and like that's garbage. And then a lot of blacks, they have this theology where like white people is evil. Like, no, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. The Bible doesn't say anything like that. Like, the Bible is against racism. I mean, God made us all. We are imagers of God. So the fact that we bear God's image, and it doesn't mean like we look, right? An imager is just a fact that you're created by God. That's what you are, and it's kind of like an office, or trying to think of the word. I can't, but it's basically something like the way we create. We all that, like, we are set to rule and reign here in God, like as like tiny gods, right? To perform that function, like to where we create and we reign over the planet, and we take care of it and we shape it. Because from Eden, that's what our job was to make the world like Eden, like where God dwelled, and we talked with Adam and stuff like that. And we were to go out across the world and subdue it and make it like that place, right? Learn God's Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moses, and it's expanded to the Old Testament. So that, like, the Old Testament, just so you know, what Jesus would be reading, what Paul would be reading, what all of them would be reading is the Old Testament. There was no New Testament. He wasn't looking at Matthew and then making a commentary. Like, Paul wasn't looking at Matthew and then making a commentary. No, he was looking at the Old Testament, like Torah. And they say the law of Moses, but the law of Moses is the law of Yehovah, the law of the Most High. It is also called the law of Christ, right? And that's it's the exact same thing. Like, it's Torah. And you'll hear a lot of people say that Paul said that the law was like nailed to the cross, but and then this gets into translation as well. But if you look at it, it's not. He's not saying that the law is nailed to the cross. It's the penalties of a law. And then there's some things you have to understand, which if you go to Monument of Yehuda and go down, you gotta scroll down. But I have different videos that explain different aspects of this. Not from me, but from other people who have done rigorous research, scholarly research. Not the this is what I think, and this is why white people this and that and this and that, and this is why black da 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 da. Like, not that stuff where it's like half-assed and it's just what they want it to mean. Like, but actual that tells you what an Israelite would have thought when he saw it. What in his time, like, he wasn't thinking black and white. An Israelite didn't give a damn about black and white. Like, that doesn't matter to them. Like, it's so dumb that you would even focus on that. But yeah. So the core of this is we need to go back to Torah and learn those concepts and become those people, and will prosper. If you get the 10 Commandments right, then you're civil. Like, you have a peaceful community. a relatively peaceful community, and then we can actually go back to having one America, because we do want economically independent as a community. You don't want to have to rely on the government or white people to supply your stuff. You want to be able to we want to have our own stores, which we do have. I mean, there are some stores, but we want to have our own stores. We want to have our own schools. I mean, not our own schools. Like, we don't want segregation or anything like that, but we want schools that, are run by people with our best interests in mind, right? So whether that's a white person or a black teacher, it doesn't matter. We just want good schools, but it also starts with the parents. But my battery's running low, so y'all have a good night. Shalom. This is one of the religious videos. It's not something that I'm going to do all the time, but it's just something I thought of, something that does affect the black community, and I see a lot when I talk to people about it, about religion and stuff. So y'all have a good night. Again, shalom.